say that I had a traditional Puerto Rican upbringing, large family. We were 6 kids, 5 girls and 1 boy, so a lot of competition. And my parents were small business owners. And I grew up initially in East New York and then in Queens. And my parents worked really, really hard, and they instilled, I think, incredible Puerto Rican values, work ethic, education. Education was stressed to an incredible extent. So we knew that that was incredibly, incredibly important. And my mom and my dad always wanted to make sure that we maintained our Puerto Rican culture. So they made sure that we studied hard and we got good grades. And if we did, our reward, as it were, was summers in Puerto Rico with my grandparents. So while everybody else was, going to summer camp and learning to fish, I was in Las Montañas de Naranjito for 2 months out of the year, milking cows and playing with goats and having probably what was an incredibly enriching experience, obviously being fully bilingual, speaking Spanish, and the food and the music and everything. And that was my upbringing. When we moved to Queens, we were the only Puerto Rican family in the entire neighborhood. So I think my mom liked to tell us we weren't different, we were unique. And we sort of celebrated the fact that we were bilingual, and we had this very, very interesting summers and very interesting Christmases. And what I found is we took that uniqueness and we sort of celebrated it. A lot of my friends, sort of my core little group when I was a kid in Queens, we were all from different nationalities. One of my best friends was Jewish, the other one was Italian, the other one was Chinese, and I was Puerto Rican. So we were just like this little United Nations in school and then on the block. So we were always, they would come to my house for Three Kings Day, and I would go to their house for Chinese New Year. So I think it became a very nice way of sharing, and I had something I felt very important to bring to the table. And they would come to my house, and my mom would speak Spanish to everybody. My mother's bilingual, obviously, but just so then they could learn, and just so then they could go back and say, oh, I learned this in Spanish, and I learned that in Spanish. So we took what could probably have been a negative, the fact that we were the only Puerto Ricans, and we kind of really turned it into a very nice positive, and something to celebrate, and something to be proud of, and something to really instill in our friends. I'm Puerto Rican, and this is what it means, and have some pernil and arroz con gandules, and And it was something ever since I was a little kid, 6, 7, 8 years old. I think maybe it was the Perry Mason series. There were certainly no Latino role models at the time to motivate me and to encourage me, but I always saw the lawyer as the person who went in the room and with their words. You didn't need a scalpel, you didn't need something, you need a medical instrument that fixed problems. And I always said, you know what? This is a person who helps people with evictions. This is a person, if you're getting a divorce, if you're a corporation, this is a person who helps you make money. This sounds like a pretty good career path. And ever since a little child, I always wanted to be a lawyer. I always felt that this is the direction that I wanted to go in. I wanted to help people, and I wanted to be in a position to be a professional advocate, and that really is what a lawyer is at the end of the day. Whether your client is a victim of domestic violence and you're going into family court, or whether your client is a multinational corporation and you're going in to do a very sophisticated public offering. That really is what you are. You're there, you're offering your legal services, but you're solving a problem. My parents were not lawyers. They weren't in a position to offer, let's say, concrete advice in terms of how to get into law school. There was, frankly, very little mentors out there for me at the time. I have to say, this is going back almost 25 years. I don't want to date myself. So what my parents instilled, instead of sort of concrete how to get into law school advice, was really a spirit of civic mindedness, of independence, of perseverance, of following your dream. And they were always very particular. If you want to do something, then you do it. And you don't let anybody tell you no. You don't let anybody tell you it can't be done. And you really focus on the positive and making a plan and making sure that whatever you decide to do, whether you want to be a professional, if you want to go and work for the circus, or whether you want to be a lawyer, you got to put a plan together, and you have to work very hard. And that's really what they conveyed to me, and that I sort of took to the next level when I was applying for law school, or when I was actually, even before that, when I was in college and studying pre-law courses. There was very few people around sort of tapping me on the shoulder and saying, hey, you want to be a lawyer? This is the path. So I had to do a lot of my own research and look for my own little mentorship groups in order to sort of get the motivation and the inspiration to really go to the next level. And as corny as this may sound, the person who really played that role for me at that time ended up being my husband. We met in college. We were taking pre-law courses, and he wanted to be a lawyer, and I wanted to be a lawyer. And he had no mentor, I had no mentor. There was very few groups out there in a position to motivate young, sort of aspiring lawyers such as ourselves. So we sort of became our own mentorship group. And he devised one plan and I devised another. When he graduated from college, he went on to become a New York City police officer. And I went on to become a paralegal in a law firm. Neither of us could afford to go to law school at the time. You know, we didn't cry about it. We just went our respective paths. We knew we wanted to serve the public. We knew we wanted to be lawyers, so we worked, we saved money. And then we just started to sort of meet with other different Latino organizations like the Puerto Rican Legal Defense Fund, the Puerto Rican Bar Association. And that's when we learned, you know, there were other groups and there were other organizations that were there to help us. And my husband, and I'm so proud of him, today he's a justice of the Supreme Court. And before that, he was a special narcotics prosecutor putting away drug dealers. So we think back, you know, and we look at our pictures of when we were at Fordham, we say, my God, you know, we're two kids, we didn't know what we were doing, and all we knew is that we wanted to serve the public, we wanted to have something to do with law, and he went sort of the police officer route, and even that, he was a cop in the South Bronx when the South Bronx was really in bad shape. The South Bronx now is really thriving, but then it was really tough, and that was part of his strategies as well. You know, this is the path that I'm going to take. I'm going to become an expert in criminal law, and then I know the law schools will then accept me, and I'll be able to get scholarship money, which is what happened with him. And I went the corporate route, working for very prestigious law firms, and did the same thing. And then when we got into law school, we went to different law schools, and we ended up being competitors, as it were. And then when we graduated, we discovered our real passion for public service, both of us. I thought I was originally going to become a corporate lawyer and spend a couple of years doing corporate law, and really enjoyed it, but just had this, it's almost like a calling to do public service. And public service can mean different things to different people, and I've spent the majority of the last couple of years really working for government in sort of very aggressive ways in terms of being able to be in a position to give legal advice to high-level people like the mayor of the city of New York, and being able to really instill really dramatic change in our justice system. I don't think there's any, you know, young person of color growing up during those years cannot recall one or two or incidences where somebody may have made a racial epithet or made some stupid comment. And frankly, my position usually was to ignore it and just to go forward. I didn't dwell on it. My mom always taught us, for example, people said, oh, you speak Spanish, that I was smarter than they were because I spoke 2 languages and they only spoke 1. So I always felt ahead of the game, and it was my mom sort of always reinforcing in us that we had a special gift and it was something to be proud of. So it didn't bother me and I didn't dwell on it. My greatest accomplishment so far, I think, really has been a personal goal. And my personal goal very, very early on, and it was probably when I was in law school, is I made a vow to myself that I would never do anything or take a job or be in a position and do something that I didn't feel very passionate about and that I wasn't excited about, and something that I felt that I wasn't having an impact. And I think every single position that I've held, whether it's Deputy Mayor of the City of New York and counsel to Michael Bloomberg, or working for the Chief Administrative Judge for the State of New York, I have always been so excited at every point of that career opportunity. And in doing those jobs, I've created portfolios for myself, doing what I wanted to do in a way that I felt was really helping the community. And that includes, in New York City, all of New York City's communities. When I worked for the courts, it was really the entire state of New York. There's a problem, and I've always been very excited about fixing problems. Talking about domestic violence, if we're talking about a lack of diversity on the state court system, if we're talking about jury reform, A lot of the areas that I've chosen to tackle have been, fairly complex, but they've been things that have been inspiring to me to come up with creative solutions. Fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not rich, but I made a conscious decision early on that I would be in a legal profession that allowed me to have an impact. And I think I've done that, and that's makes me proud that I've been able to sort of achieve my personal goal.